Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where we talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of His Dark Materials. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, let's take on the Coulter and Boreal situation, because it was kind of interesting, like how he's showcasing her in this world, because she doesn't look like she's just, oh wow, like she's a starstruck, because she's just looking at the people, but obviously like Boreal, and it's kind of interesting getting his perspective, because I don't know if he never really brought this up in season 1, at least not to my recollection, really, like the distinctions between the worlds, because he's like, oh yeah, like basically how like businesses, like the government, he believes like the government has even more control over its people than a magisterium does in their world. And even going as far as saying, like, the fact is that it's a lot more capitalism than it is. It's more like, about shops and spending stuff. Like, people care about that more than, like, worship, because obviously it plays a much bigger role in their world than it does in ours. So I just thought that was kind of an interesting thing. But obviously, you can tell Coulter doesn't really care too much, because the only thing she's interested in, she doesn't care about other worlds. All she cares about is Lyra. So she finds out first and foremost about the whole situation. Well, for one, he's trying to show off, like, oh, look at all this wonderful stuff. And I guess it never really correlated in my head, because I just assumed, like, he was collecting all that stuff for the Magisterium. But it's like, if he was, he would have taken it back. But it's more so, like, he said it himself, he's a collector, because he's got his own place, he's running things. Because I figured everything he was doing there, he was doing for the Magisterium. But it's like, I was under that assumption. But it's like, no, he's doing everything of his own. Like, he collects stuff that he feels like, it's like, he talks about it later on with Coulter, like, this is a place where he gets to be whoever he wants to be. He's able to, run a business, make a name for himself, do whatever he wants to in this world, and have the freedom to collect stuff and not just be adherent to other people. He's able to kind of be his own person. But he's showing the whole place off. And the moment he's showing it off, I was like, granted, it kind of popped up before, but I feel like this episode, it really resonated to me. Like, oh, you have a thing for Coulter. You're trying to show off. You're like, oh, you big flexing right now. I'm like, oh, look at all this amazing stuff I have. Oh, this could be worth so yada, yada, yada. It's like, you're showing off. He even talks about it later on. Like, he wanted Coulter to share in it with him because he has a thing for her. But it's more of a thing of, like, his approach to the whole situation because of the world they come from. It is a thing that, like, obviously it's like, oh, women can't be, scholars. Scoff. It's like, obviously women are kind of held down and not be able to have the full, obviously, advantages that men can. And obviously that's a complicated thing because, like, obviously she finds out about Mary. She's like, wait, what? She studies that. She's allowed to. It's like, yeah, because in this world, women can be in that position. But obviously in their world, women are kind of held down. And obviously for Coulter, she's upset because she's like, if I was able to be myself, like, I think for her, it's like if she was able to kind of rise to who she could have been, like, rather than just being kind of who she is now, but she doesn't know, like, the sky's the limit, like, who she could have been. And I think for her, that also reflects on what kind of mother she could have been, like, what kind of environment she could have raised Lyra in, because it's in a world where you basically have to tell little girls, yeah, you can go to a certain height, and beyond that, only men can go, but you'll always be held back because you're a woman. Like, there's, But, like, obviously when she goes to talk to Mary, and it's like, oh, you're Lyra's mom and everything. It's, oh, your daughter, she's so fascinating, she's so smart, like, you must be so proud of her. But it's like, for Coulter, she's hearing all this stuff about her daughter. Oh, her reading the alethiometer. The fact is how much she understands dust. And I think for Coulter, it's a combination of, I don't know my daughter at all. Like, she spent time with her daughter, but even then she still doesn't really know her, so she's never really had a chance to really know her, and to see someone else gushing about her daughter, someone who's spent some time with her daughter, been able to have those conversations with her daughter, I think it makes her a little envious, just on both who Mary is and her position, because she even talks about it later on, like, the fact is, like, she's a little upset, but even she begrudgingly admits, like, like, how brilliant Mary is, and I think for her, it probably upsets her to know, like, my daughter and her were having such intellectual conversations. Like, the fact is, Mary's in this world where she can be whatever she wants to be, study whatever she wants, And I think that it hurts Coulter on many different levels, both as a mother and just, who her potential, because she ended up saying, like, she wrote great papers, but she could never publish them. She would have to give them to a man to have credit, for that. So, and she never saw the credit for it, And obviously, it's more so like, she's like, well, look at all that you've got here, Boreal. Like, the fact of the matter is that what I am to you? Another bit of your collection? He's like, no, I want you to share it. But even then, it seems like, it's almost like, I get where he's coming from, but even she's like, if you knew the real me, you'd know basically like how she phrased it. She basically phrased it like if you really knew the real me, which it's like you don't. You see me a certain way because you see me as someone that you can obtain, and like I think, and without him trying to, I mean, he is looking at her like another object to add to his collection type of situation. Whether he doesn't mean it for that to come off that way, but it does come off that way for culture because it's like you don't know me. If you really knew what I was capable of, And so that was interesting. It's also, we also play into that whole thing about like obviously her leaving her demon behind because like, well, you can't have your demon out and about, but she closes it in. I was like, what's that about? But it's like, well, we already know because of season 1 she can be far away from her demon. That's why I'm like, they still never really explained that. But then it's like, he's like, where's your demon? She's like, well, you've come across people who've got basically control, witches. So it's like, because like I said, like we heard a couple episodes about a ritual that lets you kind of separate from your demon. Like that's why witches can do that. So I'm like, culture had to have gone through that. But we also bring up the whole aspect of like, oh, what did you hear about me and my affair with Azrael? It's like, oh, like he seduced you, and it's like then it's like, yeah, he left me with a child and a widow. Sorry. And it was like, he's like, oh, why are you bringing and he got a little jealous, being like, oh, why are you bringing up Azrael? It's like, this isn't about Azrael. This is about me, and I think that's probably also to the point. It's like, you're assuming that this whole story is about Azrael. It's like, because I think for her, it's like, that's all I am. I'm like, oh, I'm that woman who had the unfortunate situation with Azrael. She can't even be her own person. It's like, Azrael has to come first, and then she kind of comes second. Like, that's her whole point, At the same time, you have Will, trying to cut open another window, but obviously he did it last episode, but now with everything going on, he's thinking he can't because they're planning on stealing the lithiumometer. So they're like, if we plan this out, we can cut from this world into Boreal's place so we can snatch the lithiumometer. And obviously, we see him test driving it, and it's like, holy crap, so obviously this world does mirror that world. Because obviously when it comes to like this multiverse theory, like the worlds are parallel to each other. So it's like, yeah, they're kind of like side by side typically. So it's like you cutting into one space leads you into a parallel. I mean, well, that's also interesting to think about too, because when you see the worlds are kind of represented by like these lines that you're slicing through, and they're all like tiny little lines. So it's like the window to this one world, like how, I mean, is it simply that when you actually really think about it? Is it just like, hey, this world, that world with the other Oxford is parallel to the world they're in, or is it simply the thing is that the fact is that they have to would if he cut a little slightly to the right, would that be him opening up another world? Like, could literally centimeters, maybe even millimeters difference take you to a different world? I'm curious about that. Like, I'm assuming like the worlds are that thinly connected, like the veil between them is that thin that like you could easily just moving to the left or right cut through another world. Or maybe it's just that thing of like, it is this thin line, but it's such a precise part you have to hit and cut to get. I don't know. Like I'm probably and most likely thinking too much on it, but I think that was such a fascinating aspect of, obviously, like I said, the worlds kind of line up, so they're trying to work around that. Obviously, I love they bring it up again this episode. I'm like, okay, there's going to be a point where Will forgets to close one of those windows. Oh, to be fair, there's one that's open right now, and I'm curious what issues that causes, because there's the one that goes from, well, because like there must be another portal somewhere that they're not aware of that goes to yeah, I forgot it already exists. Yeah, because obviously Boreal and Coulter came to that world where Lyra and Will were already at, but they used that to get to the other Oxford. Obviously, because that's the portal they used to get to the other Oxford as well. So, like, obviously that's an in-between lane. So, I guess that is kind of the purpose. Like, that world acts as that. Like I said, it's just a situation where I was overthinking things. But, right, circling back to the whole point I was trying to make, just correcting some stuff in my head. But I'm wondering, like, those windows being open all the time. It's like, that has to be bad, considering, like, Will, you have to close it. Maybe those circumstances are a little different because maybe they weren't made with the knife, or maybe they were. We don't really know, but it's like, because they've been open, like, since, like, season 1. So that's why I'm like, there must be some bad back. I mean, well, maybe, like, the Spectres have something to do with that as well. Regardless. But obviously they're concocting their plan, and obviously the girls find out about Home Dude who stole the knife last episode getting got by the Spectres, and now they're blaming Lyra and Will because it's like, you did this. It's like, for one, we were defending ourselves. Hell, Will lost a finger. Home Dude was trying to kill people. It's like, I guess for them, they were okay with whatever he was doing because it's like, hey, he was safe and he was okay. Because they were like, I didn't know they were aware of what was going on. So it was like, they knew he had the knife and everything. And I guess it's like, because it seemed like he was in the tower the entire time, but maybe every once in a while he popped into the streets below and would kill Spectres to keep them all safe. Maybe not. I don't know. But obviously they're dead set on getting revenge on Will and Lyra. But it's like, it's no one's fault. It was a set of circumstances. He was the one trying to kill them. They were just defending themselves. Like, he's the one that came in ready to slash and everything. So, but now it's like, oh, that's going to come back to bite them in the ass. And it's that whole sad thing of like, it's like much like the guy that Will accidentally killed out of self-defense. It's much like that, where it's like, he didn't mean to do that. He was just trying to defend him and his mom. It was a scary situation. So it's much like that. I was just defending myself. He didn't kill the kid or, throw him to the Spectres. But in their minds, it's like, yeah, you're just as much responsible for what happened to our brother or Home Dude as the Spectres are. And obviously that guilt is there, so... Obviously, they're trying to concoct a plan, like obviously their plan to get the alethiometer. And so, obviously, Lyra acts as bait to draw Boreal away. And obviously, Will cuts into the room, not realizing, like, oh, hey, Coulter's in here. And he tries to sneak the alethiometer, but her demon's there. Obviously, it leads to the confrontation where Lyra sees her mom. It's like this is the first time they've been face to face this season. They haven't been face to face in a while, because obviously the last time Lyra saw her mom was at the end of season 1 when Azriel and her were talking. Granted, she never saw Lyra, but Lyra saw her. But regardless, I thought that was, an interesting face-to-face. Obviously, she's petrified upon seeing her mom. And obviously for her, it's like, here, I heard you can read the alethiometer. It's like, that's great. The fact of the matter is, I could teach you so much. You could be... Because, like, what she wants is, she's like, Lyra, you're so powerful. You're so special. The fact of the matter is, for one, so many people are going to fear you because of what you're capable of. But it's also like, I want you to rise to your full potential. Because, like, for her, she had to live a life, as she talked about Boreal, where she kind of had to be, pushed down. And it's like, I don't want that for you. I can teach you so much. You, with this power, basically, you can rule so much. And it's like, in her own way, it's her trying to help as a mother. But obviously, the history they currently have, it's like, Lyra's not going to trust her. It's like, every time you've lied, you've hurt me, you manipulated me. It's like, especially considering, like, oh yeah, you're also the same woman that was running experiments to separate kids from their demons, and it ended up killing a lot of kids. Like, it's like, a lot of that your daughter's not going to be too forgiving of, because it's also like, oh, the only reason why I'm spared is because I'm your daughter, but like, you did this to countless other children, other parents who had children as well, So it lends itself to that. And obviously her mom's trying to give her a alethiometer. It's like, you're just like me. And she's like, I'm nothing like you. Because, and she ends up having Pan attack her demon. And it ends up in this interesting point where it's like, it's hurting her at first, but then she eventually kind of like is unaffected by her demon being attacked, because we know there's something there. Once again, we still don't fully understand it. Like I said, this season seems like it kind of gave us hints to it, but it hasn't directly told us that's exactly what's going on with her situation. But she was able to fight past the pain, because she was able to she's able to separate herself from it, because she can separate herself from her demon like that. So even Lyra was like, wait, what's going on? While Will is going up against Boreal, which is like, I don't want to hurt you. But then Boreal's like, oh yeah, like, it's too bad. What happened to your mom? What would happen to your mom? She's so frail. And obviously, luckily Will was able to get the knife, and they were both able to bounce. But it's like, there's no following them, because especially for Boreal, it's like the world they're in, there's specters there, and that's going to lead to us getting hurt if we go there. Like, it's like they devour everything that makes you you. But then it was interesting, because you had Coulter being like, dust, and it's like, wait, because obviously because she even said she was going to explain like what dust is about, why Azrael is doing what he's doing, including the sacrifice of your friend and everything. So it's like, she has a lot more answers. So for her to say dust, it makes it seem like she's like, basically the way to control something is to understand it. By understanding it, you can control it. So it's like, I don't know whether this is her planning on trying to control the specters, because it's like, obviously she's like, we're going to get Lyra. You want your knife back, right? You don't want to have, you're really okay with just your circumstances being, hey, this teenager took this knife from me. So there's that. On the Magisterium front, we have the whole situation of, hey, the witches attacked us, and they went through the portal, because obviously the Magisterium's trying to, it's like, well, what do we do about that whole thing? Do we deny that portal's existence? Because once again, they built this world and like, oh, the authority is all there is to it. There's nothing greater. There's nothing more out there. But for other people to, obviously it's been whispers, but obviously for there to be like, oh, there's actually way more. There's other worlds out there. It would bring up questions against religion. Once again, it's kind of interesting because obviously this is a very like old mentality of our world. Once again, it's like the blending of science and theology, which is interesting because even, because it's like, oh, like how do you bring up theology and science is what Mary was asking Culture, and Culture was like, well, it's in everything. And I thought that was such an interesting response because once again, she comes from that perspective of a world that's mainly ruled by religion and faith, but there's also advancements in science and stuff like that. So it's an interesting parallel, like I said, that some people have to like come to terms to. Like they have, some people choose one or the other, and some, find a balance, which I think that's probably not the easiest thing to do between faith and science. But I'm sure for some people, I mean, obviously for some people it is like, oh, I can find science in my faith. Like, it's everything is under the, umbrella of my faith, and that gets, science falls under that umbrella as well. Some people have that belief as well, so I think that's such an interesting thing. But obviously their thing is all about, no, the authority is all there is. We do not accept any of this other. So it's like we need to keep people's, traps shut about this. Anyone that's spoken out against it, we've kind of pretty much locked up. Even it's like, yeah, man, and obviously women. It's like, could you say that with more like, but the fact is, he also like doesn't like being questioned, because it's like, McPhail is like, oh, I'm the, cardinal now. And so it was like Father Graves. It's like, yeah, I need you to, you're going to get locked up, because he kept being like, we need to strike now, or at least arm up around the portal, because that way, we don't know when the witches are going to come back and what they'll bring with them. But because the cardinal is like, no, like you are filled with doubts, like, and doubts are the reason why our brother and kin ended up getting killed. So it's like, you're a doubter, so you need to be locked up before he spreads the doubt. It's like, this is one of those situations where it's like you're ruled by complete and utter blind faith. Like, blind faith is good, but when you devote completely to it like that, believe in that, and not even open, your mind to other things, like, obviously that's how they've been kind of ruling that world. So obviously he's asking the other father, hey, the alethiometer, I want you to look into your alethiometer and give me some answers. Granted, we know he can't read his as well as Lyra does, because Lyra can get results immediately. His takes a long time to get results, but it's like, yeah, Culture's looking for something valuable. We need to find out what that is. We now know, obviously, that's going to eventually make them go, oh, it's Lyra. Why is she so important? So it's like, if Culture's after her, maybe there's something there. We'll have to, wait and see on that front. So that was our little update. Another side of this is the, well, there was also like this interesting little conversation, I thought, because obviously, for Lyra, it's the whole conversation about like, her mom, hurt Pan to hurt her before. And obviously it's like she sees that her mom wants to do good, but then it's like, how can I believe her when she goes around and does other terrible shit? And obviously for Will, it's like, he can't imagine that. Like, obviously he's afraid for his mom. There's never been a situation where he's been fearful of his mom, So it's a different circumstance, but obviously for Lyra, it leaves her in this complicated, situation, because it's like, and she even said it scared her in that moment, like, I acted more like her. She's like, I hope I'm not anything like any of my parents. Maybe I could be more like Ma Coster, or more like Lee, but Will is like, you don't have to be anyone but yourself. People would be lucky to be like you. And it's like, oh, no, that was a sweet moment between them. So it's like, now they have the alethiometer back. She's like, I'm going to help you find your dad, which is so interesting considering your dad and aforementioned Lee are trying to track you two down. So interesting how like everything's, I think it's going to be obviously one of those things where like everything and everyone comes together, especially with Mary's storyline, because it's like, the angels tell her like, oh, watch out for the snake. outwit the Guardian, and you're like, what's that all? Because immediately, like, the snake has got to be Boreal, but it's like, go protect the kids. Don't worry, they will protect you too. But it's like the angels are like, this is the last time we will ever speak in this world. Your work here is done. So I guess it's like, her work allowed the angels to speak through her. Like, you went through all this, you met Lyra, and Lyra opened your world view up, and you were able to kind of see things in a different light, and now you were able to communicate with the angels, so they were able to tell you what's necessary. Which is so interesting, considering, like, once again, the whole thing about destiny is, if you know what your destiny is, you know, you're kind of potentially going to fight against it, or maybe you'll over or course correct, and now end up making nothing happen. That's why the whole thing with Lyra, I mean, because I think that's also what culture's part in all of this too. It's like, I don't want my daughter to go down this destiny route. Yes, definitely. Like, I don't want her to go down this destiny route that destiny has played out for her, you know, because it can be dangerous. And like I said, in her own complicated way, she does care about Lyra deeply. So, but Mary, getting past guard ended up in that world where Lyra and Will are. Well, granted, it's dangerous, but it's like, hey, you're going to be okay. But it's like, hey, her worldview opening up, being like, oh my God, I'm in a different world, meeting up with Lyra and Will, be like, yo, this is crazy. I'm really interested to see, you know, where that storyline takes us going forward into the next episode. It's going to be interesting to see where all of this ends up taking us. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. See you the next time we meet. Be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.